Hey guys, apologize for the mess again, apologize for the noise in the background of what I think is my refrigerator. I keep trying to find a quiet time and a time when I don't have a bunch of projects going on to shoot another video, and I've just finally come to the realization that's never going to happen. I've, like many people right now, I've got a displaced family member living in my house, so telling myself I'm going to have more room, telling myself I'm going to have more time, these are all things that I tell myself, but that, you know, back in my mind I know probably not going to happen. So take the chances while I've got them. Here I am. I want to show you guys how to make a really cheap, really simple, I think pretty cool looking, or I hope this one will be, spaceship. This one's going to be the only one where I use a kit bash part. The rest of these have just been entirely trash and recyclables. So I'm walking past my recycling bin, and for some reason my wife has one of those big foam egg cartons outside of it instead of in it. And it's because these particular foam ones I can only recycle at the store. So I've got 18 of these little cups. And I look at the shape of that little cup and I go, you know, that kind of looks like the front of a spaceship. And I had just seen an episode of a very old Doctor Who where the ship takes off, very obviously manipulated by string. And decided I wanted to make one. And it had these silly spindly little legs on it and all this stuff. So I made what I fondly call the cricket shuttle. And what this is that egg carton cup for the front. You just cut out the cup, a TP tube, some scrap baling wire that I had make up the legs. This is a twisty straw that I bought years ago, before straws were basically, you know, outlawed. Cardboard from a pizza box, cut to shape. These are Colgate. I'm going to give a little plug there for them, just because their toothpaste caps are a different shape than I usually use for engines. It was on sale. This is the top of that toothpaste cap that pops up as a sort of, you know, access port. And you'll see I used very many of the same parts on this 1950 style rocket that I did. Now the main difference I did on these two is this one I paper mache'd to try and blend because the egg carton, this fits in. I'm walking past the trash, I'm like, wow, that'll make a rocket. I know it looks like something else, but let's face it, you know, that's what rockets are shaped like. But there's this extra space and I wanted to smooth it out, so I paper mache'd it this way. And I feel like that was a mistake. I like this other look better for a rocket with the overhangs. But so when I made this, and then I saw the 1950s rockets, I've been watching a lot of 60s movies, I'm like, you know, I should make one of those too. And then I decided, I always liked Space 1999's Eagles because they had some of these parts that were like, you know, they were modular and interchangeable, and it made sense that a civilization would make their ships and their vehicles from the same parts, you know. So one of the things I did, like I've said before in other videos, I usually shoot my ships on blue so we get that sky aura, if anything. So I made this one section of the circle green. When you use these cups, you'll see real close on there that it's got like a little piece that sticks out in that circle there. And then this allows me to chroma key in wiggly energy and stuff to look like a reactor, which is kind of neat. Or at least I think it's kind of neat. I like the way it looks. So then I'm in the process of making a tank. Same front. This is just the gray paint on it. These will be its treads when we're done. I didn't get the bottom yet. I've got some wheels hanging up there for all that. Could skip the wheels, make it a hover tank. But so today, so we call this the Cricket Shuttle. We call this one the Dragonfly Rocket. And I do wish I had used a paper towel tube instead of a toilet paper tube here, because those 60 rockets are generally like 30 stories high. They're ridiculously big. So I might make a transport version of this, or you know, that's bigger. And then the tank I have not named yet. But what we're going to be working on today is the Hornet. And now you hear water draining from upstairs. The basement's the best place to shoot video for audio. So the Hornet is going to be the same front, the same body shape, but then I've cut these kind of jet fighter looking wings again out of a pizza box. What I love about using the cardboard with this stuff is white glue, just your regular school white glue, sticks this stuff together like super solid. For this, the only thing I had to use hot glue on, which then makes a mess over here, is the straws, because the plastic won't stick to the cardboard. So then the other problem we have is we need a space back here to be able to mount engines to, or like on the Rocket I did the port back here, and we need that closed for any rear shots of it. And also TP2, since I was a kid, have gotten very, very squishy. So what we do for that is we take a piece of cardboard from anything, pizza box again, which by the way, the pizza boxes that you get from like for Aldi's refrigerator pizzas, the Mama Chiosi or whatever. I'm plugging another thing that I'm not sponsored by. And I would love to be sponsored by a pizza company, by the way. So if you have a better pizza box, let me know. Seem to do a very good job. And all I'm going to do is trace a circle on this, cut it out of there, and glue it on. And then I will show you the paper mache that we use to cover this. And I do that for two reasons. One, no matter, you still get some lines, but no matter how much I've painted over these little rotating pieces of a TP2, those weird lines always show up and they're dead giveaways. The other thing is the one coat of paper mache on here using the brown paper makes this so much more solid, you know, and even this could be, I mean, look, I can squeeze and it won't squeeze, which is just wonderful. So if you're using it for a while, it'll work. So I am going to cut out the circle and be back in a minute. One of the things you want to make sure you do when you trace it out is that you leave it big enough to actually glue the tube to it. You want to have enough space for the tube to touch it. I actually got one of the better circles than I usually do. If you're terrible at cutting like me, this can be a challenge. Once it's good and tight, I mean, you might want to let it dry for a few hours or even overnight if you've got the time. You can come around and trim the extra edges that stick off, but you'd rather have those extra edges. And don't squeeze this to fit this if you cut it wrong. You could even just glue a square to this and trim it later. But if you start squeezing this, it'll squeeze very easily and then you'll be stuck with that shape. Pro tip, take the logo side and make that the inside. And if you want to make this a little stronger, you can also put one on this side. But remember, one side will be covered by this, but this is very flexy. Other problem I noticed on this piece that I cut off, something poked a hole in it. We'll fix that with some of the paper mache. I used the stuff like fiberglass. I used it to patch a hole on this one here on the tank. So that'll work. So then it's just as easy now as a ring of glue right on the part of the tube you're going to paste. And the other thing is, you know, if you go like me, all sloppy with this. So just get your glue on there like that. Slap your circle on like that. It's, you know, it's the same glue they let you use in kindergarten, so you can just smear it in there with your fingers, unless you've got some kind of allergy to it. And then don't sit this on a piece of paper or a wooden table that you won't care about because the glue that overflows will stick it to it. Find a nice non-sticky piece of plastic or aluminum foil like we use for the paper mache and sit it on there and just let it sit for a while and it will dry up and then you'll be able to cut it to size. Alright, so this actually, one of the things I love about this paper stuff too is it absorbs glue really quickly and paint. Like this paint's been drying, it's all been less than an hour. This was already solid enough for me to take the scissors and just trim around. You still see a little bit right there, just, you know, clip it off. And now you've got, you know, some strength there. But I was using a drill earlier, so I have things out. But it's not quite enough strength. So what we're going to do is add some paper mache to it. And I'm going to forego the newspaper stage of it because if you've been watching my videos, you know that, in my humble opinion, this brown paper like that you get from brown paper bags or shipping packaging is just the strongest stuff when it dries as paper mache. So we're going to do a very small amount of glue right now because we don't have much to cover. And the difficult part here is getting the one-to-one with the water. I try not to use flour-based glue anymore. Flour-based, for the paste for the paper mache, just because I had a problem where it created mold once. This has got a lot of gunk sticking to it now, brown paper, silver paint. But what this is the handle to those little dollar store foam brushes. When I use them for the latex projects like the quadrupus, the foam eventually gets so mush you can't use it anymore. But these little dowel handles make nice mixers. Get that glue all mixed in. And yeah, I can see already I used way too much water. Two options here. If you're going to need enough paper mache to use it up, you can go ahead and add more glue. If you're not, it's just going to cause you a much longer drying time, which is what I'm going to go with right now. But so I've got this left over on my mixer. I'm going to take that mixture and go ahead and put it on our cup here. And this is going to look terrible for a while, but what you'll do is you'll take your spare white glue mixtures. So at the end of this, whatever's not used, since it'll dry out if you don't have a way to cover it, and you'll cover this whole thing with it. And the reason being, later on your paint will stick better to that than it will to this foam, is my theory. I don't know if I've actually ever tried painting just the foam. Alright, so we've got that. We're going to take these pieces, and these long strips are what I use for masks and stuff, but we're going to make them smaller because they're just for this little project. Put them in here, get them good and wet with the stuff. We want to make sure we get a nice amount of glue on there. Then we're going to kind of squeeze them out, smooth them as much as possible, and just take our tube and wrap it in these. And you want to pay particular attention to your little square back here that you put on. And if you see that corrugation there, you want to make sure we cover that with an ample supply of this. Now, if you're good at this, you'll use small enough pieces that you don't get a lot of bend looking back here. So you want to make this as uniform as possible. See, I already did something. I might have dried it out too much. And that's basically it, guys. We're going to wrap this in this. Oh, and the other thing you do want to do is make sure you come up at least as far as your nose cone is going to be. However, if you've got the patience to wait for the paper mache to dry, you can glue your nose cone on after. It will stick to that just fine. Alright, we'll be back in a bit. See me as much. So, I've got here now our paper mache tube, one side closed off. Like I said, if you want a little bit more structure and strength, you can close off the other side with cardboard too. You see it needs a little bit of a trim right there, but I mean otherwise this comes out pretty nice and smooth, especially once we paint it. I patched that hole on the egg cup with that. Once we paint over that, we'll get the same kind of smoother result. I can cut this, but since the egg cup is going over that slot at the end, we don't have to worry about it. And here's the thing. Now, it's going to make sense in your head to paint the pieces individually before you stick them on, so you can get a perfect paint job all around this thing. And for the wings, that might work, but the main thing you want to do is attach these wings and this piece to this while this is still paper and glue, because once you get acrylic paint on here, it is not going to want to stick as well. I've used hot glue on this, and with the acrylic paint already on, and it just peels the paint off. So this white glue that we're all so used to using, is washes off your hand stuff, makes such a nice rock solid connection between paper and cardboard and paper and paper. So I'm going to put this on first, then this, and then I'm going to dig out from my kit bash stuff that my friend sent me, a whole bunch of toy guns and stuff and cannons so I can make my ships. The gun that I'm going to mount to the bottom of this, it's going to require me to punch a hole. You can use an awl, which is what I did with the tank for the wheels. They're not on here yet, but that's what I did there. Or you can use a rotary drill on here. And so this is only like 1 or 2 pieces of paper and glue over here. But across this center where I'm going to put that hole, I put a bunch more. We're going to make the hole a little smaller than we need and try and pop the cannon in and hope it'll hang there okay. Because I'd really like to be able to stop motion that cannon moving for at least some close-ups and get some of those old school Battlestar Galactica shots working. But let's go ahead and put the cup on first, just because we don't want to put the wings on and then have the nose cone not fit. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the inside of the cup here and smooth it as I go. And I can go a little deeper in and the edges and stuff. You're probably going to put more glue in here than's ever going to touch the side of the tube. Go ahead and do that, and just take your open end if you have one and put it on that side. I almost put it on my capped off end, and you can see that this isn't perfectly round because it's trying to reshape my cone here. Alright, and now because there's a spot where this gets tight, that's going to go ahead and dry on its own real nice and hard. So just try and get it on there so that it stays rounded out like you want it. The bottom sticking out more than the top. There we go. And that'll dry all on its own. The trickier part's going to be these guys, because you're going to put these on and have to kind of hold them in place for a few minutes while they dry. Clothespins, rubber bands, things like that are all your friends, but you're going to do one wing at a time so that it can kind of lean where it needs to be. But yeah, I mean, that's the simplest parts right here. And then when I get to popping the hole in, I'll show you what that looks like. Glued it on the side there. And then I've got a clothespin on either side, keeping that from rolling over. And at this angle, I can see that that's not as straight as I like. So I may move that a bit. And yeah, that's about it for that. So I need to finish painting this, but this is the gun I'm thinking of mounting to the bottom. And the problem I'm seeing is I remembered this peg as being more peg-like and less like that. So I'm going to need to cut a hole just a little smaller than that and have it kind of reclose around that if I want this to be able to move on the ship. It's just straightforward. Those guns will look pretty cool, but I'd like to be able to do that at least once or twice when I shoot it. So what I did was, for this to be able to go through, again, I reinforced that with some extra paper mache around the center. And now while I'm waiting for the wings to dry, I just put some basic glue in there because that'll form a more rubbery plastic kind of deal. And then I will pick the rotary tool closest in size to that and go ahead and drill my hole. Alright, so got the ship here, the wings are on. I lined it up so that both of the parts with the print on it are on the bottom. That was mostly so I could remember that this is my almost center that I strengthened up to put the guns on. I'm going to paint it before I put the guns on because they're going to cover a lot of areas and make it difficult to paint. But I'm going to try and cut the hole in it first to make sure this will mount up where I want it to before I even bother painting it. Probably important to know here that I keep wanting to call this a Dremel. I know it's not. It's a very cheap rotary tool. And I don't actually know that much about rotary tools. So I'm guessing a lot at what I should be using. But the first thing I'm going to use is a teeny tiny bit to make a starter hole. If I can figure out which one of these will work for that. So probably going to go with this duty because it looks kind of sharp. And then I'm going to move up to the blocking one right there. It fits almost inside the peg that's going to go into there. And again, I want things to stretch a little bit when it goes in so it'll stay in when it's popped in. And one of the things I learned with the tank project was if you cut a hole too big, you just keep filling it with our good old friend glue, and that'll leave a nice stretchable little almost plasticky area for stuff to poke through and get held on. And somewhere I put down the cap for this, and I don't know where. Now I'm going to have little drill bits everywhere. But okay, so my wife figured this one out. When this is unscrewed, this goes in the chock, and then this is to lock it in place. This little button here, lock it on. I'm going to put a glove on my holding hand so I don't get cut, and I do have safety goggles on, even though this is mostly paper. Once the bit's in, I plug it in. Alright guys, here we go. So we're lining up. I should probably put a dot, right? Going right there. I know it doesn't look like much more than an awl poking through, but because of the little bit of stiffness this has from the glue, it's much easier to get through when something's spinning. Be back in just a second. I have another video to shoot with the same tool. So I know I want to get to this size to open this hole up, but if you look, it doesn't fit anywhere near into that hole. So I'm going to start with this tool that's tapered and see if we can open it up that way first. I always unplug this thing before I start messing with the bits. You could decide whether or not you want to do that yourself. Got to hold that down. But the reason I do it is I'm used to working with much bigger drills, and with no trigger guard on a drill, it always bothers me putting a bit in that something can make that sucker start. And you'll cut a hole in your finger. One of the things you learn, see, and this was on. This had switched itself on. I heard the noise when I plugged it in. One of the things you learn when you get licensed to fly a drone is safety is very important. Alright, so here we go. Holding it down, this going in. Don't push too hard if you got a cheap tool like mine, because it'll just stop it from spinning. Work it in there slowly. Widen that hole out. This might actually wind up being wide enough. Nice thing is, if it's too wide, I could always add some paper. Alright, let's see. Let's give it a quick test. This should, nope, way too small still. This is a very big peg. I did not realize it was going to be that big. You may want to wear a mask when you do this stuff, and you definitely want ventilation, because even though it's paper, man, does it make a smell when it goes. So we're going to switch this one out now, the tapered one, for the larger one, and hope, going side to side, we can make that hole the right size. And again, I could always, you know, the thing about building it is you could always patch it if you have to, but I'd rather not do that. All right. So it still seems a little small, but what we're going to do now, hold it in its strongest point. Do not use the wings as a, because even though, I mean, look, they're on there pretty good. Like I said, that white glue will bind to this really nicely. But hold it at this reinforced center again, and try and press this in. And we'll see if we reinforced it enough. See, the cardboard wants to bend instead of hold up. Alright, hole's not quite big enough, so we're going to work it out a little more. And there we go. Our gun is mounted. It'll turn. It'll hang upside down. And that is our unpainted Hornet, guys. All I need to do now is paint it, and when I've got some animated footage of it, I will show it to you.